The following interview with Mitch Pileggi took place on Friday, April 18, 2025 at the Full Moon Cineplex in Nashville, Tennessee as part of the Full Moon Tattoo and Horror Convention. Enjoy!
So you saw that crazy nonsense up on the screen. Oh my Lord. Yeah, it's good. This is a really cool theater. This is a great idea, and I'm really glad I got to come over here and check this out. This is something. And I'm glad you all came to see this thing, and we could chat about it if you have any questions about it and want to know anything that went on. If you looked real close, if you looked at the furniture on every set on there, you'd see my teeth mark because I chewed every piece of furniture. I mean, no shit.
Mitch Pileggi, everybody. So,
Thank you.
So, before we get, I want to talk about Shocker, but before we get to Shocker, I got a couple other things I want to talk about.
All right.
I'm Dr. Gangrene, by the way, everybody, local TV horror host. Most of you know me, but just in case you don't. All right, so you have had a long career, 40 years.
It's been over 40 years.
Over 40 years.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And this was right at the beginning of it. So.
Well, this week I watched a movie that I know was your first film. It's called Mongrel, and it was made in Austin, Texas, and directed by Bob Burns, who was the art director for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Oh, wow. I didn't know he had directed anything. All right, tell us about Mongrel.
It was I was a local actor in Austin. I was doing theater, and I guess somebody who had some money there decided they wanted to do a movie. Let's do a movie. It's Austin. Let's do a movie. So we did. Bob Burns. He did
Chainsaw Massacre,
and he did made some of the props on Poltergeist, and so he was a real. I mean, you walked into his house and the armchairs had arms. I mean, like real arms. It was a sight to behold. But yeah, so I mean, it was a goofy movie. It was about a guy who thought he was a dog and he just killed people. And it was, and I played an idiot. So
you did a good job playing it. He was kind of it was great. He was a bad guy.
I was just a bull. I was kind of like a bully jerk who just picked on everybody and ended up. I think I got killed, didn't I?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I think I got you. Okay, I got to ask you about one more movie before we get to Shocker, and that is Death Wish 4. I would be mad at myself if I didn't ask you about getting beat up. He gets beat up by Charlie Bronson in there. That's right.
Yeah, well, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun because he was in a bad mood that day, I guess, and he wasn't having any of me. So he even when we were rehearsing it, he actually before he got cupped up, he kicked me in the groin and he goes, "Oh, I think he's hurt," and I was like, "No, I'm okay. Let's go." But it was just a little bitty part. It was just goofy. And I did a lot of little bitty parts for a long time there before I started getting lucky.
But you landed up in Shocker not long after this whole time, right around that same time period we're talking about, of Death Wish 4 and Mongrel. Tell us about meeting Wes Craven.
Well, I didn't even know that Wes was involved in the movie. I got my agent called and said, "You got an audition." So I said, "Okay." This was for a horror movie and playing a coach in this thing. So I walked in the room, and the casting director goes, "This is Wes Craven," and I was like, "Oh shit, okay." I didn't know that's what I was coming in here to meet him, but anyway, I did the audition. I auditioned for actually one of the other roles in the thing, the coach, and but the scene was where the coach is taken over by Pinker, and so I had to go in the whole Pinker deal, and I guess I scared the shit out of Wes's partner, and she actually moved across the room, so I finished, and they called me back, or they called my agent and said he wants you to come in and read for the lead, for the killer, for Horace Pinker. And so I was very excited about that, and I looked at it, and I I went in and I just kicked out the jams and had a ball with it. It was so much fun. You think I scared her the first time, the second time, and then she walked out of the room. But it was, I had a great time shooting that movie. I had so much fun because, as you can see, they just gave me free range to do whatever I wanted to do, and Wes kept encouraging more and more. He'd be off camera feeding me those silly lines like "Take a ride in my Volkswagen." I'd go, "Oh God, Wes, no, I can't say it." He goes, "Yeah, say it. It'll be great. It'll be great." I go, "Okay, shit. I'll take a ride in my Volkswagen." And he was doing that throughout the whole thing. It was a lot of. He was a great man, and I miss him terribly. And I got to work on a number of his other projects after Shocker, so I felt myself very fortunate to have walked into that room and met that man, because he was quite an individual.
Yeah.
So.
And he paid you a real compliment because he wrote lines specifically for you, because he found out, hey, this guy, not only is he big and can do the physical, this guy can act.
Well, during the electrocution scene, he hadn't really written much dialogue because he didn't know what he was going to get with me. He didn't know if I could act or not. And so after a little bit, he kind of realized that I was an okay actor, and that's when he wrote that all that stuff in the electrocution scene that he's saying to Pete Berg before they electrocute him, and boy, I had a good time with that. Michael Murphy, who played the stepfather, he was Pete told me later on that Mike turned to him and said, "Man, he really gets into this shit, doesn't he?"
And Physicality. I know you beat yourself up pretty good doing that.
Well, I just had Jared Padalecki's brother replace my shoulder recently because I was throwing myself. I mean, we had stunt guys. I had really good stunt guys on that thing, but a lesson that I learned too late was, and I tell young actors this now, is let the stunt guys do it. Because when you're young, you think, man, I want to do that. I want to throw myself off that top of that building or off that car or whatever and slam myself against the wall. It looks fun, but I'm paying for it. I'm paying for it now.
There's some good fight scenes in there.
It was fun. Yeah, I had a good time. I had a good time beating up Pete Berg.
You guys want to ask him some questions? Anybody?
Anybody want to know anything? Yes, sir.
Thank you for the hours of entertainment, first of all. And I would like to ask, so when making Shocker on the set, working with Wes Craven at the height of Freddy Mania, were you thinking of you becoming like the next horror icon or horror speaker, or were you already considering meteor roles like an assistant director of the FBI?
I wasn't thinking about that then. No, I was just happy to have a job. I was happy to be selected by Wes to play this character, and as far as, I think it was his intention for it to be a franchise. It didn't happen, and for whatever. Well, I think one of the reasons you saw the special effects in this thing were. We had a problem with that. We had a guy who was doing our special effects who had a new technology, he said, that he was going to be using, and the only problem was his technology was going up his nose. So a lot of the stuff, a lot of the special effects, they were just piecing. They were scouring all over town for places that this guy had put these pieces of film, and to put it together to come up with what they had on those special effects. And it's cheesy, but it's it kind of, I mean, it's like I think it gives Shocker that, I don't know what you would call it, not a charm, but it's just something that it works with what it is, and I'm not embarrassed by it at all.
How much further on was the call for Director Skinner after?
That was a while. That's a good bit, yeah. I went through a lot of other crap before I got there. So if you look at my resume, you'll see it. But yeah, you bet. Anybody else want to know anything? Yes, sir.
So how did Timothy Leary get involved in this movie? What was he like?
He was an interesting cat, I'll tell you. And I got to grab him and throw him up over a counter, I think. Wes. Wes just knows those people and just connections, and he thought it'd be interesting to have him come in and play that role, and I got to work with Timothy Leary. That was a trip. A trip.
Somebody else. There you go.
Yes, sir.
How'd you get into acting?
I had done some acting in high school, and I had did a little bit in college. But then after that, I went on to a completely different career. I started working on DoD contracts with the military, done private contractor overseas in Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. And then I was in Iran when the revolution started, and I was like, okay, I think I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm going to go back and find something else to do, and that something else was acting. I went down to Texas and to Austin, and I started doing community theater. And I got my first laugh on stage, and that was like better than any drug that I've ever even thought about. So it was that really just led me on to do, to stay with it. And then I just made the decision I had to go to LA and give it a shot. So I did, and then that's when I walked in that room and met Wes. So it wasn't too long after. I had a really good situation. My brother owned a carpet company, a carpet and drape company, and he let me work for him, and that's so I could make a living. And anytime I had an audition, they just let me go. And so I owe them a lot, because they made it possible for me to do to be here and talk to y'all right now. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Kind of to follow that up, you're obviously not afraid of genre work with everything you've done. Is that something you think that found you, or are you looking out for the X-Files and Stargates and all those types of projects?
I think it just, I think having worked, the life experience that I had accumulated working on military contracts overseas, I think kind of lent itself to those types of characters, those authoritarian, like Skinner. The character Skinner was really my dad, because he also was in the same business. He was also a private contractor to the military, and I watched him growing up, and he sat at the desk. He had the white shirt. He wore the glasses. He was bald, and I didn't really do it intentionally when I started playing the character. But my dad had passed before I started doing the X-Files, and I was watching the first episode that I did with my brothers and my sister and my mom, and after it was over, they looked at me and they go, "That was Dad." And I was like, "Oh," because I watched and I go, the hand gestures, the stuff that the Skinner did, it was my dad, and it just kind of just seeped into my soul, and I let it out through that character.
Great character.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, Chris Carter gave me a great character to play,
You
so
brought it to life.
thank you. I appreciate that. And he was their champion.
Okay. Hey, Mitch.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to Nashville. Hope you enjoy your time here.
Thank you so much. I'm going to see my brothers. My brothers live here, so I'm going to spend some time with them next week. Yeah.
The character in Shocker, Pinker, had a limp that would obviously went away when he was with other characters. You talked about being physical. Was it a challenge to remember to keep that limp with you?
I'll tell you a story about that. The little girl,
Oh, yeah, the girl.
she's the one that established the limp. I came onto the set my first day working. They'd already shot that scene with her. And I came up to Wes. I go, "Oh, okay, Wes, I got this great limp worked out, man. I'm going to be doing this." And then he goes, "Well, you have to do it like she did it." Really? I mean, she did great. She was wonderful. What a mouth. So anyway, I wasn't able to. But and at one point there was, because we came back to do reshoots. And I said to Wes, "Wes, I can't remember which leg I was limping with." And he goes, he just got this, his eyes got real wide, and I was, "Oh my God," he goes, "We'll look back on the film." And so it took a little bit for us to figure out which leg I had been limping with, and we finally came up with it. But it was, that way. It wasn't hard to do. Physically it wasn't hard to do, but But there was a lot of physical stuff in that movie that kicked my butt.
Now, I
And
think we also know that the foul language of your character also must have come from the little girl.
it was her fault. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Wrap it up. Okay. One more question. One more question, and then we've got people waiting to see Scream.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, when did you realize that, the X-Files, I think part of the appeal of that show was the characters and the relationships between Skinner, between Scully and Mulder. When did you realize that people were really invested in these characters? It was more than just the sort of gimmick of the monsters in a police procedural. The characters really connected with people.
Well, we didn't have the immediate feedback of social media back then, so it was weird. It was different. I mean, it was just beginning. That was just beginning, where there would be chat rooms or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. It just I think we won the Golden Globe after the first or second season or something like that. It came pretty quick, and nobody was expecting it. David thought the show would last 7 episodes. He goes, nobody's going to watch this. He was wrong. I mean, I'm meeting 10-year-olds that are binge watching the show right now, and I told Chris that recently, and he about cried. He thought he was so happy about it. But I don't, there were some really wonderful actors and wonderful characters on that show that he developed. And I said this to Chris too recently. Who were you talking to back then? Because everything that you wrote about on this episode is happening now, including aliens. So I mean, it's like, he goes, well, I'm not that smart. And I said, dude, you're an X-File. But he is. But anyway, there's another movie wants to come in here and watch it. Thank you so much for being here and watching this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Y'all take care. Thank you very much.